Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis, by Matson. Chapter 11. The Gauntlet of Rulers. The grand causeway to the golden palace of Atlantis stretched before the 10 kings like a serpent of living marble, shot through with veins of gold and crystal that pulsed with the faint, restless heartbeat of aquamancy. Every footfall sent ripples across the stone, as though the island itself were a living thing, stirring uneasily beneath the weight of its corrupt rulers. The air hung thick and oppressive, a choking miasma of myrrh and frankincense mixed with the coppery reek of old blood, scorched flesh from nearby sacrificial altars, and the faint, sickly sweet undertone of pharmacia vapors drifting on the breeze. Elixirs designed to induce false loyalty, ecstatic visions, and spiritual hunger among the masses. The sky above pressed down like a bruise, heavy with clouds the color of congealed wine, while the concentric rings of the island city sprawled outward in glittering, blood-soaked splendor. Marble and gold gleamed under torchlight, but the beauty was a thin veneer overwrought. Distant screams rose from lesser arenas where losing contestants were executed for the crowd's amusement. In shadowed alcoves, biomancy rituals drained the life from chained innocents to heal the powerful. The entire island reeked of impending judgment. Leon walked near the rear of the column, his Tanaju bronze plate strapped over a torso still aching from the previous battles. The olive branch token from the groves of Calliste pressed warm against his heart, a fragile anchor in the storm. His forearms and shoulders burned with a persistent, luminous pain. The blue scars inflicted by Kion's gifts had spread further since the fall of Gorgothan, glowing faintly like submerged veins of sapphire beneath his skin. Each pulse carried the Watcher's voice, low, rumbling, laced with dark affection. "You have grown strong, pup. Look at them. They fear you already. Why chain yourself to a distant creator's vision when thrones and godhood await?" He tightened his grip on the token until the wood bit into his palm, drawing a thin line of blood. The sharp sting grounded him. "Be silent," he prayed inwardly, the ancient words of the faithful remnant rising like cool water in his mind. "The vision holds. Atlantis will sink beneath the waves. Obedience endures, even when the body fails." At the head of the procession strode Prince Thalorian, favorite son of Poseidon and co-ruler of the innermost ring. The 14-foot Nephilim was a towering vision of hybrid horror and majesty. Thick, iridescent crustacean armor, plates of deep ocean blue, emerald, and pearl white, had fused inseparably with his flesh, glistening perpetually wet with seawater that dripped from every joint and seam. Massive pincer claws flexed where his right hand had once been, clicking rhythmically against the marble causeway. His face retained a chilling charisma beneath partial plating, sharp, aristocratic features and eyes the color of storm-tossed seas that missed nothing. He moved with calculated grace, yet the armor's growing weight was evident in the subtle grind of chitin and the way his shoulders tensed. Only he and Poseidon knew the truth of the forbidden ritual that granted him aquamancy, the consumption of one of his father's 6 fingers. It had made him unstoppable in the rings, but the corruption deepened daily. He surveyed the other kings with the cool detachment of a master player regarding his chessboard, a faint smile playing across his lips as though he had already foreseen every outcome. Beside him lumbered King Titanor, the outermost ring's militaristic enforcer, his magnetically unstable body causing bronze clasps, stray weapons, and even door rivets to orbit him like grotesque satellites. King Euryphon of Ring 2 glided forward with scholarly poise, yet his eyes darted frantically at phantom threats only he could see, his pharmacia-corrupted mind fracturing further with every breath. King Sableon of Ring 3 scraped along in brooding silence, extra-armored limbs fused permanently to his torso like grotesque tumors of chitin and livingstone. King Zephyrian of Ring 4 strode with arrogant flair, wind swirling about him despite the bloody coughs that racked his toxic lungs. King Malachor of Ring 5 shambled pale and corpse-like, undead thralls trailing behind him in shambling parody of loyalty, his own flesh decaying in visible patches. King Dravok of Ring 6 limped heavily, brittle bones grinding audibly like millstones with each step. King Valthor of Ring 8 burned with barely contained inner fire, his skin permanently blackened and cracking at the edges, the stench of scorched meat clinging to him. King Calith of Ring 9 smiled with deceptive charisma, new organs and limbs shifting subtly beneath his robes, like parasites eager to burst forth. Leon's gaze settled longest on Valthor, his assigned opponent in the first round of the Gauntlet. The western coastal pyromancer was a wild, rage-filled mirror of what his own fallen comrade Piron might have become. Flames licked unconsciously at Valthor's fingertips, charring the air and leaving trails of superheated smoke. Their eyes met across the column. "Tanaju, dog," Valthor snarled, voice crackling like dry kindling. "Your blue flames and pretty wings will wither before my inferno. Your team died for nothing. Piron burned, Boreas scattered like chaff. Now you face true fire." Leon met the taunt with silence, though grief twisted like a knife in his chest. Stelios's final sacrificial roar still echoed in his ears. Lysandros's calm acceptance. The loyal tank had slain their Pharmacia brother, and then himself, so Leon alone could claim the throne of Ring 7 without further staining his hands. The olive token was all that remained of their bond. He whispered a quiet prayer for their souls as the column entered the palace gates. The central arena of the Golden Palace was a masterpiece of opulent horror. Tiered seats of veined marble rose in concentric rings around a vast fighting pit, packed now with 40,000 spectators whose chants bordered on religious frenzy. Kings of flesh, kings of blood, glory to the Watchers and the eternal hunger of Rav. Vendors moved through the crowds, selling roasted meats dripping with fat, watered wine laced with mild pharmacia stimulants, and cheap amulets inscribed with invocations to minor watchers. The sand of the arena had been freshly raked by trembling slaves, yet dark, stubborn stains remained, as if the ground itself had developed an insatiable thirst. Massive braziers roared with unnatural flames, fed by Mansi priests, casting long, writhing shadows across walls adorned with gold friezes, depicting the descent of the 200 watchers on Mount Hermon. Idols of the three orders stood sentinel in alcoves. Pharmacia scholars with elongated skulls and bulging veins, Guff warriors twisted into monstrous hybrid forms, Ruach priests wreathed in elemental fury. Each carving seemed to breathe with residual power, as though the stone itself hungered. High above, in opulent luxury boxes carved from living crystal and overlooking the entire spectacle, the 6 Egyptian Nephilim giants reclined like living blasphemies against the Creator. Amun-Ra the Devourer dominated the center, his golden skin drinking in the torchlight while crystal growths protruded from his shoulders and spine, arcing with stolen lightning. Setek the Stormbreaker toyed with a goblet of blood-laced wine, malachite scales shimmering. Horus the Farseeing's multifaceted eye clicked and whirred. Isis Tefnut's water-rippling form dripped eternally. Thothmachsheva scribbled on clay tablets with a femur stylus. Sobek the Flesh-Eater clacked his crocodile jaws, feasting on platters of forbidden meat and warm human blood. Their thunderous laughter rolled across the arena like profane thunder. "Behold the Runts tournament," Sobek roared, voice amplified by unnatural winds. Dung the runt and his self-devouring spawn. Watch how the body fails so beautifully. Even the blue flame dog of Tanaju will learn the lesson before we sail home to the Black Land. Leon's scars flared brighter at the mockery. Kion stirred with irritation, but Leon turned his focus inward, fingers brushing the olive token. Strengthen me, creator of all things visible and invisible. Let not their laughter or the temptations of the Watcher break what you have called. A priest in flowing blood-red robes, his face hidden behind a mask of gold and bone, ascended the central dais. Hidden Mansi workings amplified his voice into a booming judgment that echoed through every tier and corridor. Hear the sacred law of the Tournament of Rulers. The 10 crowned kings shall clash in the gauntlet until only one stands worthy of the title High King of Atlantis, to sit beside or over Poseidon himself. Round 1 consists of 5 paired battles, ring against ring, to the death. Survivors advance to the greater cull. The Watchers demand blood. The orders foretold this failure of flesh, mind, body, and spirit shall crumble. Let the spectacle begin. The pairings were proclaimed with ritual solemnity, each name echoing like a death knell. Ring 1 versus Ring 2, Prince Thalorian versus King Euryphon. Ring 3 versus Ring 4, King Sablian versus King Zephyrian. Ring 5 versus Ring 6, King Malachor versus King Dravok. Ring 7 versus Ring 8, Leon of Tanaju versus King Valthor. Ring 9 versus Ring 10, King Calith versus King Titanor. The first battle ignited almost immediately. Thalorian and Euryphon strode into the arena to a roar that shook dust from the rafters. The favorite son raised one massive pincer claw. At his command, hidden canals beneath the sand erupted in violent geysers, flooding the pit knee-deep in churning seawater. Euryphon countered with masterful pharmacia, secret knowledge that manipulated existing matter without creation or destruction. He accelerated decay in the very marble channels feeding the flood, turning reinforced stone to brittle rust mid-flow. Contact poisons shimmered in the water, and he bent light and shadow with powders to create illusory duplicates of himself that danced across the waves. For long, harrowing minutes, the clash was a deadly ballet of water and illusion, rust and poison. Thalorian's armor shrugged off much of the corrosion, but Euryphon's mind-altering vapors briefly induced hallucinations even in the Nephilim prince, causing him to strike at phantoms. Yet Thalorian's hybrid power proved overwhelming. He summoned crushing whirlpools that swallowed the illusions, then waded through the flood with inexorable might. Seawater obeyed his will, forming pressurized blades that sliced through Euryphon's defenses. The Pharmacia King's eyes widened in terror as his fracturing mind showed him horrors that were all too real. Thalorian closed the distance in a surge of water and chitin, massive pincers closing around the man's skull with a sickening crunch. Euryphon convulsed once, blood mixing with seawater, his mind shattering completely in his final moments. The body slumped, claimed by the receding waves. Thalorian stood victorious in the draining flood, armor gleaming wetly, seawater dripping from his claws. A low grind of fusing chitin accompanied his return to the staging area. The corruption was visibly progressing, plates tightening, movement growing slightly more laborious. He glanced toward Leon's position with shrewd calculation, as though marking a future piece on his board. Leon watched from the royal staging area, heart heavy. Mind fails first, he reflected, echoing the ancient warnings of the orders. Then body, then spirit. Even the favored son bears the curse. The second battle followed swiftly. Sablion of Ring 3 versus Zephyrion of Ring 4. The multi-limbed Eastern altering warrior moved with silent, methodical brutality. Extra armored limbs sprouted from his torso, thick with stone-like hide that shrugged off the Aeromancer's cutting gusts and suffocating vacuums. Zephyrian played shamelessly to the roaring crowd, lifting Sableon high on howling winds, forming deadly vacuums that threatened to collapse lungs, creating swirling barriers of razor air. The spectacle was magnificent, yet Zephyrian's own corruption betrayed him. His lungs, poisoned by prolonged use of his gift, filled with toxic air of his own making. He coughed bright arterial blood mid-invocation, staggering as a vacuum collapsed inward on himself. Sableon seized the opening without mercy. His fused extra limbs pinned the showman down, while the stone hide crushed the life from him. Zephyrian's final gasp was a wet, bloody rattle. Sableon returned to the staging area in silence, fresh cracks spiderwebbing across his permanent mutations, extra limbs twitching with residual power. The third bout pitted King Malachor against King Dravok. Necromancy clashed against geomancy in a grotesque display. Dravok opened yawning pits in the arena floor and hurled massive boulders, petrifying opponents' feet to the sand. Malachor drained life force from hastily dragged-in slave fodder, raising short-lived undead thralls that shambled forward in rotting parodies of life, clawing at Dravok's limbs. The northerner laughed savagely through the pain, his brittle bones groaning as he crushed the thralls beneath falling stone and localized earthquakes. Malachor's own decaying flesh sloughed away even as he replenished it, organs visibly pushing against his skin. Dravok's final geomancy slam shattered the necromancer's form. The pale king twitched once, stolen vitality failing, before stillness claimed him. Dravok limped back, joints grinding louder than before, cracks spreading across his frame. Tension thickened as the herald's voice rang out once more. Ring 7 against Ring 8, Leon of Tanaju, bearer of the blue flame and wings of holy fire, versus King Valthor the Pyromancer of the western flame. The arena erupted in pandemonium. 40,000 voices chanted, winged dog of Tanaju." Petals, coins, and even small offerings rained from the upper tiers. Leon stepped forward into the blood-stained sand, Stelios's iron-studded club strapped across his back, shield firm on his left arm. Valthor entered from the opposite side, grinning through blackened, cracked lips, flames already wreathing his forearms and neck. The air between them shimmered with rising heat and the promise of violence. "Dog of Tanaju," Valthor taunted loudly enough for the crowd to hear, voice crackling like dry tinder. "Your little team perished for your ambition. Piron roasted himself from the inside. Boreas choked on his own winds. Now you face a true master of flame. I will char your pretty wings to ash and feed your bones to the fires of Atlantis." Leon summoned Kion with focused intensity. Bright blue flames roared to life along his arms and shoulders, granting superhuman strength and speed while superheating the air around him. Massive wings of living blue fire unfurled from his shoulder blades, lifting him slightly off the sand. The scars on his skin glowed brighter, sending fresh waves of searing ache through muscle and bone, but the olive token anchored his resolve. "The body fails," he replied, voice carrying clearly on the wind stirred by his wings, "but the word of the Creator endures forever." The great conch horn, polished and massive as a grown man's torso, sounded its deep, mournful blast, the signal for death. Valthor attacked without hesitation. He slammed both palms to the sand and a roaring wall of orange-red flame erupted across the arena floor, racing toward Leon like a living curtain of damnation. The heat was infernal, scorching the very air and forcing spectators in the lower tiers to shield their faces. Vendors' wares sizzled, even the sand began to vitrify. Leon launched skyward on his flaming wings, gliding high above the inferno with graceful power. From above, he channeled Kion's gift into a condensed projectile of superheated blue flame. The lance streaked downward like divine judgment, striking Valthor's left shoulder. The impact exploded in a burst of azure light, superheating the pyromancer's own fire and cracking blackened skin with white-hot agony. Valthor bellowed in rage and pain. The pyromancer retaliated with a barrage of hurled fireballs, 5, 6, 7 in rapid succession, each larger than a warrior's torso. Leon banked and dove with aerial precision, dodging most while one clipped the edge of his left wing. Searing pain lanced through him, but he spiraled, using his own blue flames to cauterize the wound mid-air. He dove low, blue fire coating his fists, and slammed into the sand with controlled force. The impact sent a rolling shockwave of azure flame outward that met Valthor's next defensive wall head-on. Blue and orange-red clashed in a roaring cataclysm that turned sections of the arena floor to glowing, molten glass. The crowd screamed in ecstatic bloodlust. Valthor laughed wildly, though the sound emerged ragged and smoke-choked. Internal heat consumed him visibly, fresh charring spread across his chest and neck, skin splitting like overheated clay to reveal raw, weeping muscle beneath. "You burn bright, dog, but I am the fire incarnate." He superheated a wide section of sand beneath Leon's feet into treacherous, glassy slag that trapped one's sandal. Leon tore free with raw, guff-enhanced strength, wings propelling him upward again, but the effort cost him. Kion's voice growled louder in his mind, tempting him toward unrestrained power. "Unleash everything, pup. Become the storm they worship." Leon gritted his teeth and whispered the prayer again, the olive token warm against his racing heart. He hurled 2 more precise blue projectiles in quick succession, forcing Valthor to raise a dome of flame. The azure lances punched through weaker edges, scorching the king's arms and drawing fresh hissing blood that evaporated instantly on contact with superheated skin. Valthor staggered but countered with escalating fury, random walls of fire springing up across the pit, colossal pillars roaring skyward, the very air growing so hot that priests frantically invoked cooling mancy to prevent the stands from igniting. Each invocation drained him further, his movements slowed, lungs laboring like bellows filled with ash, skin sloughing away in blackened flakes. The 2 warriors closed into brutal melee. Valthor grabbed for Leon with burning hands, trying to drag him into a crushing embrace of living flame. Heat seared through Leon's bronze plate, melting rivets and blistering skin beneath. Leon twisted free with multiplied strength, driving an elbow wreathed in blue fire into Valthor's jaw. The blow landed with explosive force, charring the pyromancer's face and sending him reeling. They grappled across the vitrified sand in a whirlwind of flame and fury, wings beating for aerial advantage, club and fists crashing against fire-wreathed limbs. Valthor's reckless power grew ever wilder, but so did the cost. His laughter turned to choking coughs, visible cracks spread across his blackened torso. In the final cataclysmic exchange, Valthor gathered the last dregs of his life force, rage, and corrupted gift into one monumental fireball the size of a chariot. He hurled it with a smoke-ravaged scream that echoed across the palace. Leon met it head-on, wings fully extended like banners of judgment, blue flames roaring brighter than the noonday sun. The 2 infernos collided in a blinding explosion of light and heat that lit the entire central ring like false dawn, forcing even the Egyptian giants to shield their eyes. The shockwave rattled the luxury boxes and sent a wave of scorching wind through the stands. When the smoke and glare finally cleared, Valthor lay crumpled on the glassy, cracked sand, body charred beyond recognition, his own fire having consumed its master from within. Leon stood above him, wings guttering low but still aloft, blue flames licking along his arms in victory. The scars on his forearms and shoulders had spread noticeably during the duel, new glowing tributaries pulsing with inner light and deeper pain. The crowd erupted in absolute pandemonium. Leon, King of Ring 7, the winged dog triumphs, High King approaches. The priest's voice cut through the cheers like a blade. Valthor of Ring 8 falls. Leon of Ring 7 advances to the greater cull. Leon lowered his arms slowly. The luminous ache in his scars intensified, Kion's chuckle rumbling in satisfaction. Stronger now, freer. Yet Leon knelt briefly beside the fallen pyromancer's corpse, offering a silent prayer for the man's soul, another victim of covenants that promised divinity and delivered only ruin. All flesh is grass, he whispered. The grass withers. From the luxury boxes, the Egyptian giant's laughter thundered anew. Amun-Ra's crystals blazed. Sobek clacked his jaws in delight. Exquisite. The Fire King reduces himself to cinders while the dog soars on borrowed wings. Flesh fails so poetically. The other round one victors, Thalorian, Sableon, Dravok, and Titanor, regarded Leon with new wariness and calculation from the staging area. Political maneuvering had already begun in the shadows of the palace corridors. Thalorian hosted whispered councils, offering control of waterways and fresh covenants to those who would bend the knee. Titanor demonstrated raw gravity manipulation, sending bronze shields hurtling across halls. Euryphon's former allies among the Pharmacia whispered of subtle poisons and illusions. Yet, amid the depravity, Leon sensed the faithful remnant's quiet presence. Veiled servants and hidden eyes, carrying prayers from the line of Seth. A trusted attendant slipped him a fresh bandage infused with calming herbs from Lysandros's old satchel. "The olive groves remember you, my lord," she murmured. "The vision of the sinking island burns clear. Stand firm." Leon nodded, resolve hardening amid the suffocating dread. The conch horn sounded again, calling the 5 surviving kings to the next phase, a massive melee in which the last man standing would face Poseidon himself for the high kingship. Grief for his lost team, the growing corruption in his own body, and the weight of divine mandate pressed upon him, but quiet, defiant hope kindled in his chest. One obedient man amid an empire of false gods. The body would fail exactly as the covenants foretold. True power belonged only to the Creator. He stepped forward into the blood-stained arena once more, blue flames flickering along his arms like stars of judgment against the encroaching spiritual night. The gauntlet continued. Atlantis's fall drew nearer with every drop of blood spilled upon the sand. All flesh is grass, the grass withers, but the word of the Creator endures forever. This has been an unabridged audio production of Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis, Chapter 11, The Gauntlet of Rulers, by Matson. All rights reserved by Matson, LLC. Copyright, Matson, LLC 2026. If you enjoyed this production, please like, share, and subscribe. Available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow the author at Matson for updates. Links in the description.